All right, so in my last video, it was the name of the game was short videos for short books, and I don't know that I really kept with that, but today we're doing short videos for long books, mostly because I really didn't like this book, and there's a lot to say about it, but I don't want to think about this book. This took me like a month to read because this is the longest book I've ever read. Not literally. It's not literally the longest book I've ever read. It's less than 600 pages. I'm not entirely sure what the longest book I've ever read is now that I think about it, but it felt like the longest book I've ever read. And part of that, the reason that it felt like it was so long is the nature of the way it's told. But I forgot to introduce myself. So, we're gonna quick break. Hello, I'm Steven. This is Reading with Steven, and on this channel I like to read all of the books that I own because I have too many books that I've purchased and have not read. So I am reading all of the books and I'm talking about them, preferably in an intelligent and intelligible manner. So hopefully that works out. Today, we're reading The Adventures of Augie March by Saul Bellow, which, as I said, I despised. And the reason I despised it, again, is because of the narrative nature in which it's told. The Adventures of Augie March is a picaresque novel. And, as we do always, when we come up with literary terms, we go to our Dictionary of Literary Terms and Theory, which tells us that a picaresque novel comes from the Spanish picaro, meaning rogue. It tells the life of a knave or picaroon who is the servant of several masters. Through his experience, this picaroon satirizes the society in which he lives. Picaresque novels originated in the 16th century Spain, and there it gives some examples that nobody's ever heard of. Not because they're bad, but just because they're all from the 16th and 17th century. I don't know why it doesn't give a more contemporary example. Is our dictionary not good? Am I using a bad dictionary? Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is that this is an example of a modern day picaresque novel, if you will, because it follows Augie March, who is somebody who, while highly intelligent, doesn't really do anything, right? He sometimes commits crimes because it's something to do. He sometimes works for his brother because it's something to do. He sometimes works for his rich cousin because it's something to do. He goes to Mexico because it's something to do. He joins up in the Navy in World War II because it's something to do. Right? The narrative structure is really this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. There's no real narrative through line, right? If you were to tell the plot of a normal book, what did I just read? If you were to tell the plot of Pride and Prejudice, you would say that Elizabeth Bennet, you could describe what happens very easily, right? To Elizabeth Bennet, she meets Mr. Darcy. They don't get along. Her sister goes to see Mr. Bingley, gets sick. She goes to take care of her sister, and her and Mr. Darcy develop a rapport, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to explain the entire plot of Pride and Prejudice, but you could give that plot, and it would be relatively, it would make sense. You could follow the plot just by the plot descriptions. Augie March, there really is no plot. If you go to the Wikipedia page for the book, you can see that I think it's like 2 paragraphs, and it's just like some stuff happens, and then some other stuff kind of happens, but it doesn't really explain the plot. And the reason it doesn't explain the plot is because the nature of the picaresque novel is that nothing really happens. The character doesn't even really change throughout the book. It's just stuff happens to the character, and that's okay. That's not a bad thing per se. I just want to make it clear that I'm not anti-picaresque novel. I know in my video on Jerlaine, my main complaint with the book is that there is no plot, right? Nothing happens. And the same thing in The Goblin Emperor. There's no real plot to discuss it. The difference between Augie March and those two books is that while nothing happens in any of the three books, Augie March is not about the plot. Those two books, Jelaine and The Goblin Emperor, they're not really, they don't say anything either. Whereas Augie March is very much saying stuff. In order to understand it, you have to kind of understand American society in the 30s and 40s. And you have to, it speaks a lot to what is happening. Augie March really is like a stand-in for America, right? When you think about how he is the bastard child of a Jewish immigrant and some dude who just leaves his wife, and he lives in, social housing in Chicago. He lives with an old Russian woman who teaches him Russian and tries to make him learn how to be a proper gentleman, and he fails miserably at it. To the point that eventually he abandons her Russian ways. He abandons her to an old folks home, but he feels bad about it. And then it's hard to explain, but Augie March very much is America. And to that theme, the book both opens and ends with statements about America, right? The first sentence of the book, I am an American. The last sentence of the book, which didn't prove there was no America, right? It both opens and ends on America. It's just a thematic, like, this is the point. But I think in order to fully understand how Augie March is a stand-in for America, or rather, like, the prototypical American, we have to understand who Augie March is. Augie March is not just the protagonist of the story, but he is in fact the narrator of the story itself, right? The book is written in first person, and it is telling the story from the position of an Augie March who is not old, but like a middle-aged Augie March, right? It's like a 40-year-old Augie March is telling the story of his life up to this point. It's autobiographical in that sense. And throughout the narrative, our narrator Augie March, not the character Augie March, but the narrator Augie March, makes a ton of historical and literary references. It's almost unending at certain points, oftentimes to his self-aggrandizement. Many is the time he refers to Napoleon specifically. He talks about Napoleon an awful lot, the great democratizer that is Napoleon. That being an ironic statement, because Napoleon obviously took the first French Republic and turned it into the first French Empire, while at the same time pretending to be democratizing, was actually overthrowing the French Republic. And you see this kind of like, and you might look at that and say, like, what the hell is Augie March talking about? And he's talking about the fact that he thinks that he could be emperor, effectively, that he should be in charge. But he knows that as an American, it's not okay to call yourself an emperor. You have to, pretend to speak for the people, even as you yourself think that you're better than everybody else. And Augie really does kind of think that he's better than everybody else, partly because of the educational background that he has, and partly because things just kind of work out for him in a very odd way. So as far as his education goes, he's not formally educated. His original education uh, comes from a woman that lives with him and his family. He refers to her as grandma, but she actually is a lodger who lives with his family. She's an old Russian woman, and she tries to teach Augie and his brother how to be proper gentlemen, right? How to be in society, how to host a proper tea ceremony, how to dress correctly, who to talk to, and all that stuff. And Augie obviously fails miserably at all of this, but he does take in the lessons. He understands what Grandma Lausch is telling him. He just doesn't care. Later on, Augie March will start to educate himself because in a low moment, he begins stealing books to resell to students. He steals books from bookstores and then sells them to university students at the University of Chicago or at Northwestern University, both at highly educational institutions. But in the process of stealing those books, he realizes, actually, the books are really interesting. So he starts reading all of these books. He starts reading politics and history and philosophy and all that jazz. And that's when he really becomes the educated man that he is. He doesn't put that to any use, right? He gets all this education, doesn't put it to use. He doesn't do anything with himself. He, at one point, gets himself working for a rich couple who has no children. They offer to adopt him, and he says, no thanks, I'm good. And then he goes out and lives in the slums. He gets himself engaged to another rich woman whom he doesn't really care for. And he breaks that one up because due to scandal. He then goes off to Mexico with another rich woman who offers him, who loves him, and he breaks that up because he doesn't love her either. Things just happen to him. And that is a very frustrating thing to read. It's fine. It would be fine if it was a short book, right? I think if it was a 300 or 400 page book, it would be fine. It would be one thing. But the fact that it is 600 pages of and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this, it's just too much. And then the way it's written is so well, here, let me read you a section. And I think you'll start to see it. Here's a good example. So it's from the first chapter. And I think that this is a single paragraph. I'm not going to type it out because I'm sorry, it's too long of a paragraph. But I think it is an accurate example of how the book is written. So this is at the very beginning when Augie is first describing himself. My own parents were not much to me, though I cared for my mother. She was simple-minded, and what I learned from her was not what she taught, but on the order of object lessons. She didn't have much to teach, poor woman. My brothers and I loved her. I speak for them both. For the elder it is safe enough. For the younger one, Georgie, I have to answer. He was born an idiot, but I'm in no need to guess, for he had a song he sang as he ran drag-footed with his stiff idiot's trot up and down along the curl-wired fence in the backyard. Georgie Maki Augie Simi Winnie Maki Ewi love Mama. He was right about everyone save Winnie, Grandma Lausch's poodle, a pursy old overfed dog. Mama was Winnie's servant, and as she was Grandma Lausch's. Loud breathing and wind breaking, she lay near the old lady's stool on a cushion embroidered with a Berber aiming on a rifle at a lion. She was personally Grandma's, belonged to her suite. The rest of us were the governed, and especially Mama. Mama passed the dog's dish to Grandma, and Winnie received her food at the old lady's feet from the old lady's hands. These hands and feet were small. She wore a shriveled sort of lisle on her legs, and her slippers were gray. Ah, the gray of the felt, the gray despotic to souls, with pink ribbons. Mama, however, had large feet, and around the house she wore men's shoes, usually without strings, and a dusting or a mob cap like somebody's fanciful cotton effigy of the form of the brain. She was meek and long, round-eyed like Georgie, gentle, green, round eyes, and a gentle freshness of color in her long face. Her hands were work-red, and she had very few of her teeth left, to heed the knocks as they come, and as she and Simon wore the same ravelry coat sweaters. Besides having round eyes, Mama had circular glasses that I went with her to the free dispensary on Harrison Street to get. Coached by Grandma Loush, I went to do the lying. Now, I know it wasn't so necessary to lie, but then everyone thought so, and Grandma Loush especially, who was one of those Machiavellis of Small Street neighborhood that my young years were full of. So Grandma, who had it all ready before we left the house, and must have put in her hours plotting it out in thought and phrase, lying small in her chilly small room under the feather bed, gave it to me at breakfast. The idea was that Mama wasn't keen enough to do it right. That maybe one didn't need to be keen didn't occur to us. It was a contest. The dispensary would want to know why the charities didn't pay for the glasses, so you must say nothing about the charities, but that sometimes money from my father came and sometimes it didn't, and that Mama took boarders. This was, in a delicate and choosy way, by ignoring and omitting certain large facts, true. It was true enough for them, and at the age of 9 I could appreciate this perfectly. Better than my brother Simon, who was too blunt for this kind of maneuver, and anyway from books had gotten hold of some English schoolboy notions of honor. Tom Brown's school days for many years had an influence we were not in a position to afford. And like that paragraph, that long paragraph, is, I think, emblematic of the book as a whole. It is long, it has many different diversions and weird things to include. His brother Georgie's song is in there to just kind of like punctuate the narrative. We hear it starts with a discussion about his mother and ends with a discussion about Grandma Loush teaching him how to lie, and how his mother was kind of dumb but needed the help, and Grandma Loush was conniving, and so taught Augie to be conniving. And it's just, you see the de-dum, 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 de-dum nature of it just unending for 600 pages. And it was just too much for me. I admit, dear viewer, that I read a lot, but this was too much. It's just such a long book to read. And I like it, but I did not like it. And while it is humorous, there are humorous moments. It's not like it's dry or anything. Like the idea that you're going to lie to the glasses dispensary about why the charities aren't going to pay for the glasses, so they'll give them to you for free. And the charities really don't care, and the dispensary really doesn't care, and everybody knows that it's not necessary to lie, but we're gonna lie anyway because it keeps you sharp. And it's just it's humorous. It really is. It's a funny book. It's not a bad book. It's just a long book. I don't know. I wish I could say more about the book. I really do. I can't. I've spent the last month reading it, or rather avoiding reading it, and I have to move on. And in order to move on, we have to make the video. I don't know. Maybe you have something more better to say about it. Saul Bellow is a highly lauded author. He won the National Book Award twice. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature. And technically, the next book should also be another Saul Bellow book, but I'll be damned if I'm reading 2 Saul Bellows in a row after reading this one. So we're skipping ahead a little bit on the next video, or on the next book, and then we'll come back to Saul Bellow. But it's not... It's not bad. It's just deeply unpleasant to read for so long. And it's not unpleasant to read because it's like... it's gross or it's disturbing. It's unpleasant to read because it's It's like having the phone book read to you, kind of. It's just so boring. It just goes on and on and on. And there's only so much of Augie March talking about himself that you can take. I think the closest narrative style that I can think of to Augie March is probably that of Humbert Humbert in Lolita, right? Humbert Humbert has this very self-aggrandizing way of talking. He's so great. He's handsome. He's beautiful. Everybody loves him. And obviously that's not true within the narrative, but the way he talks about himself, the way he narrates his own story is very self-aggrandizing. Now, that book is only like 300 pages long, and it's a very short 300 pages. But you could see how just annoying and obnoxious it would get. If you've ever read Lolita, like, could you imagine reading 600 dense pages of Humbert Humbert talking? Like, oh, Dios mio, it would be, ugh. And that's what this book is, and that's my only problem with it. I genuinely wish I had more to say about it. Let me rephrase that. I genuinely wish that I was willing to have more to say about it. Because it's just, I don't know. I just don't fuck with it, I guess, is what it boils down to. Is like, it's too long to be something that I don't like. To read something that I don't like. And life is too short. If it was shorter, we could do it. I could do it. I powered through the Confessions of St. Augustine. I didn't care for that, but I could power through it because it was relatively short. But Augie March, it's too long. And I think there's something to be said for, not forcing yourself to read books that you don't like. Right? You see online, a lot of people have this, I don't know, competitive view of books. Like, you have to read the certain books in your life. You have to read, you can't stop reading a book, right? Because it's like a moral failing if you stop reading a book. And there's nothing like that. Like, books are art. They should be taken seriously, but at the same time, they're still a form of entertainment too, right? And if the book is not, if it's not speaking to you, if you can't see the artistic merit behind it, or you get the artistic merit, like I get the artistic merit of Augie March, I just don't want it. I understand what it's putting down. I just don't want to pick it up, is the problem. But I don't think there's any shame in actually putting down books that aren't speaking to you, that not necessarily don't speak to you, but if you're in school, you have to do your reading. But if you're doing this for your own entertainment or your own self-edification, don't stress too much about it. More or less, don't worry about it. Don't stress about books. You should not be stressing yourself over books. In fact, Augie March, actually, when he's stealing books, he talks about that there are several books where he's just like, this is too much. I think it's Schopenhauer. He's reading a Schopenhauer book and he just puts it away and says, no, I'm not reading that. This isn't fun anymore. This isn't fun. I stole this book and I regret stealing this book. So if Augie March thinks you should put books down, then I see no reason why I shouldn't do it, and I see no reason why you shouldn't either. So again, the next video is going to be, or should be technically, about the next Saul Bellow book. I have 2 Saul Bellow books. The other one is Henderson the Rain King, which is a much shorter book, so I'm not as scared of it. But I'm not reading 2 Saul Bellows in a row after this. So we're going to instead read the Decameron by Giovanni Boccaccio, the famous Italian it's a Renaissance poem. I think it's early Renaissance, really, not medieval. I think it was written in the 14th century, but that's going to be the next book. It's a bunch of short stories. I like those kinds of books. I like short stories. I like stuff like that. Like it's very similar to the Canterbury Tales in that sense. But that's what we're going to read next. I pick it up, but it's all the way over there under a pile of stuff. So I'm just going to call it. If you've listened to me rant and rave about Saul Bellow, I appreciate it. I really do. And I hope that you will leave your thoughts and comments below. Because I really like talking about books, and I like talking with other people about books. And so that is something that I enjoy doing, and I really like to do it. And I hope that you have enjoyed listening to me, even though it was a very not well put together discussion on it. It's kind of all over the place, I admit. But I hope you like it. Most of my other videos are more structured, more well structured. So I hope that you will watch some of those videos too. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Steven. This is Reading with Steven. Go out and keep reading. But don't force yourself to read books that you don't like to read, right? That's the takeaway. Don't force yourself to read books that you don't like to read.